Welcome to Vox Stream, a Kill Team podcast where we aim to help players of all skill levels supercharge their game and separate the signal from the noise. I'm Mark Meyer, joined by Kill Team heavyweights George Pratt and Joe Gallo. We're coming to you from the Triangle region in North Carolina. Thanks for listening and enjoy the show. All right, welcome back, everyone. Thanks to all the listeners out there, and thank you to my good friends Joe and George. What's going on, guys?
Not much, man. Just got back from the beach, feeling good, ready to talk some Kill Team.
Pretty good. I just got my butt handed to me, and so I learned a whole lot in my last game.
Sweet, yeah, and I've heard a little bit about that game, and we're going to talk about like some actual gameplay stuff later. But we do have just a spot of news to get to right off the bat. There's some chat. You know, actually, before the news, let me just give a quick shout out. We've got listeners in 7 different countries. I want to shout out our international listeners: Japan, Canada, Serbia, the Netherlands, Australia, the United Kingdom, and of course our friends around town here in the Triangle and the United States. So,
and only 3 of those are bots.
I know.
We don't have enough listenership to have bots. Don't get so full of yourself yet.
I will get as full as myself as I want to, George.
We'll go ahead and write 1 or 2 of those off as VPNs. But otherwise, you know, shout out to the VPNs. They're great. But the news. Joe, you said you wanted to talk a little bit about the teaser from this week.
Yeah, so GW released an article and pretty much explicitly said without saying that the next 2 teams are going to be Tau and Guardsman teams. I know we're just clamoring for another Guardsman team, but guess what? They're wearing berets this time. It's probably going to be Tempestus Scions and Vespids. That's the big rumor. I will say I am actually very excited for Vespids, even though I won't play them, just because I'm not a Tau guy. But I gotta say, it is very funny. We're getting probably another Guardsman team that's going to be like 10 guys with special weapons that hit on like.
Hey, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, man.
Yeah.
I know, but like we could have done catechins. We could have done. Let's put it this way: if they have cool jetpacks and they look cool, and I like Guardsman teams, I'll play them.
Yeah, I'm gonna play the shit out of Vespids. Vespids were super cool back in 4th edition when I played Big Hammer, and so like, if I can get my laser rock crystal space guns on my man-sized bug dudes, I'll do it.
I will say that honestly, this edition, all of the weird teams, they have like absolutely killed. Like I think every like Xenos team that they've released so far in terms of modeling and even for flavor wise has been pretty great. Like the Kroot come to mind. I mean, obviously they're not in the best place competitively speaking, but those models are beautiful, and I don't even play Kroot.
Yeah, I mean, they're not Xenos, but the Beastmen, the Ravager team, they're such good sculpts. I don't like Beastmen, and I looked at that team and went, GW, you gonna make me like Beastmen? Are you gonna do this to me?
I mean, I think about even like the team that I probably think is like the least cool aesthetically is the Arbites, and the models are still sick as hell, dude.
Oh God, yeah. I mean, plus we get to make so many cop jokes. But anyway, Mark, you did have a suggestion based on our last conversation about another favorite Xenos team of ours, Blades of Khaine.
Yeah, and I was thinking about how last time I was asking you guys for buff suggestions for Blades of Khaine, and I hadn't been able to think of anything. So I took some time, and I wanted to get the feedback from both of you on your, like, just what do you think about this? And so here's what I got. Your Exarch of choice, your leader, gets an ability, and I don't know enough about the flavor of the teams to pick a good name for this ability. I'm going to call it Aspect Ratio. So Aspect Ratio would be an ability that you could use in lieu of a strategic ploy or a pass in the strategy phase. What it would allow you to do is it would allow you to pick one of the 3 aspects, and then once during the turning point, you can use one of the aspect abilities from that aspect an extra time. It would be a 1 CP plus ability. So the first time you use it, it would cost 1 CP. Subsequent time, it would cost 2 or 2 CP, 3 CP, so on and so forth. But if it is the same aspect as your Exarch, it costs 1 less CP.
So I loved everything about that. I will say that it is not exactly lore flavorful for Exarchs to use other aspects, because the whole point of being an Exarch is that you are so obsessed with that particular aspect that like your brain is broken and you are stuck in that aspect, and that's literally not a joke.
So the way that I think Mark meant it is that instead of the Exarch using the ability, your team just gets to use the ability one extra time. It's just they
Exactly.
added
Yeah.
a like a
Okay.
tactical ploy like they did for Phobos to give P1.
Okay, so let's say I have four. Let's say I have 4 banshees. Those banshees can now use a scream an extra time instead of having to be mono banshee. Okay, you know what? That is very interesting. I like that a lot.
I like that a lot, actually.
Yeah.
My thought behind it is that it gives you some way to dirtle during the strategy phase, like an extra thing to do. I think that I like it being attached to the leader, so that way, for example, you can use it in so many different ways. It can be an offensive buff or a defensive buff. You can take the Dire Avenger Exarch and 2 other Dire Avengers. Lo and behold, all of a sudden you've got 3 guys who are going to shoot twice each turn. You can take it on your, maybe you're doing like a pretty typical 2, 3, and 3 split, and where normally you might like the Howling Banshee Exarch, you might want to take the Scorpions Exarch so that you can put an extra dude in Super Conceal for the turning point. And so just those sorts of thoughts, it kind of gives you, more choices with the team, in a team that has no shortage of choices. But, I think it could be really powerful. It also seems like the kind of buffs that they like to do. I kind of been thinking mostly about like how have they been buffing salvagers, and this kind of seems in line with those kinds of buffs. Like they don't want to give out a new strategic ploy, they don't want to really buff or change that sort of stuff, just something new to try out.
Yeah, I think that's a really inspired buff for the
Yeah.
team. I wish that they had.
That might be too smart for GW.
Yeah, I mean, listen, they gave scouts power weapons and an extra dude, so let's not give GW
I mean, the
too
easy
much
thing would
credit.
just be an extra attack on like the melee weapons, right? But again, we're trying to do creative things.
Yeah,
Though bear in mind, I will not turn that down if that happens. That would make this team just, oh god, that would be so nice.
They would tear shit up.
But
Yeah,
they would. I mean, even more so than they already do. Though I will say, just like scouts, that doesn't necessarily solve their fundamental problems, but it just makes them better at the things that they do.
Exactly. Yeah. My thought again is it's just more flexibility. Where is the real power in the team? A lot of it comes from their aspect abilities, and so a chance to just use those additional times just seems really strong.
It is. Agreed.
and fun.
Yes.
And fun. Well, speaking of fun, I think that this next bit is going to be a lot of fun, and this is some content that we're probably going to get into pretty regularly. So the 3 of us, we play in a weekly league at Atomic Empire in Durham. And so we're playing a lot of Kill Team every week. And so we're hoping to, most weeks at least, talk a little bit about our games, what sort of things we learned from them, what sort of struggles we had in them, and really kind of get into like some actual gameplay analysis. And Joe, how about you lead us off and tell us a little bit about your game this week?
Absolutely. I played Mr. Alex, known as Yith on our Discord. He was playing his Novitiates, which were beautifully modeled just to be battle sisters, which I love to death. I was playing Nemesis Claw, as I'm going to do for the rest of this league. It was a Faith versus Fear matchup, which I love that from a lore perspective. And speaking of which, the lore is what I love most in this game, and I actually do full lore write-ups for each of my matchups. I've been doing this for some time now because, the whole reason I like the Nightlords to begin with is because I read the Nightlords Omnibus, and that was amazing. So I'm sure in the show description I will have that write-up for y'all if you're curious, and let us know if you want to hear potentially an audio drama of those write-ups. But anyway.
I just want to interrupt you here real quick. So before we get into it, our mission and map for this week, for the first week of our league, was secure on Battleground. It's one of the 6-inch deploy maps.
Oh, and yes, we should also mention we're doing alternating 50-50 into the dark and 50-50 open, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so basically what we do is we're a big old democracy over in the Triangle, and we kind of vote on everything that we would like to do for the league. And all of our players voted for the 50-50 split. with no beta decima, as we experimented with that last league, and it was a giant failure. People hated it. Anyways, so
One more last interjection. So this is like the long board with the 6-inch deployment. Is that a hot dog board or a hamburger board?
oh god, this debate.
This is a board where you deploy 6 inches from your edge.
Yep, exactly.
It is one of the boards of all
It
time,
is.
that's for sure.
Yep.
It is a board of all time. But yes, so I played Alex. Fun fact between me and Alex, the first game of his first league, I played him. I tabled him by turn 2, which obviously happens with newer players. And this is a competitive league, so even against new players, I don't tend to hold back because there is, money for store credit on the line. But a conversation of me and Alex kind of led into this discussion of how much better he's gotten and how excited he was to see how much better he gotten comparatively speaking. So that was something that was kind of big in the forefront of my mind going into this. And generally speaking, Nemesis Claw is very good into something like Novitiates. They're on 7 wounds, 4 up save. Not particularly good in fighting, besides a few models, but even those models are not particularly great. So I was feeling pretty good going into this. I took the just for funsies, and I wouldn't recommend this if you're doing competitive. I took the Power Fist leader just because I thought it'd be fun to one-shot models. Because typically you want to take the plasma pistol, because the plasma pistol hitting on 2s pretty much eviscerates everything in the game. And we'll be getting to that after this discussion, because his leader also has a plasma pistol hits on 2s that will pretty much kill anything in the game. So I took the Power Fist leader. I took the Fearmonger, which, man, oh man, do I have mixed feelings about the Fearmonger. Plasma Gunner, the Skin Thief, the Ventriloquar, and the Screecher. I figured this was a good compliment. I didn't want to bother with the Heavy Bolter, mostly because it was a little bit of overkill into the sisters, and I'd rather have that Fear Grenade to take advantage of for example, their Daka Dash, because generally speaking, Novitiates like to get very aggressive with their positioning if they can, especially against elites, which they generally have a bad matchup in. So if they could send that crazy eviscerator sword lady 16 inches across the board and throw a crack grenade in my face, they're going to try to do that. Obviously, you try to play around that, which is what I did. But instead, Alex put some guys a little too far forward. I was able to exploit that and throw a grenade. It hit 2 people. And as why I said I am very iffy on that, I did exactly 2 damage on 2 shooting attacks. And that was not due to my rolls, and that was not due to faith points either. That was just luck of the draw. So the ending move of the first turning point ended with my Fearmonger running away. But to kind of get the general flow of how the game went, first turning point, I was very cagey, as you tend to be with elites, especially since those flamers can actually be very deadly to you, especially when upgraded, since they hit on 2s, and you can't really do anything if you can't roll defense dice, which I didn't really roll much in the way of defense dice this game, but I still managed to get the W. So don't let anybody tell you that your dice prevents you from winning the game sometimes, because if you can recover and focus down, you can still win the game as long as you don't get too tilted. Anyways, so, scored 2 victory points in the first turning point. He scored 4, which is fine. Tack-ups I've selected at this point are Robin Ransack, the Sow the Fear faction tack-up for the Nightlords, and then I selected, Eliminate Guards. And on secured, eliminate guards is okay. You can kind of generally explain it into the next 2 turning points, which I pretty much did. I basically had set up a reliable double 2 separate charges if I had lost initiative, so that even if I was potentially losing a Marine, at the very end of the day, I could get a double kill, which is pretty much exactly what happened verbatim. I lost initiative. I Vox screamed his first target. He did something with the give an extra APL out to somebody, and I immediately charged his bonk stick lady, the one that hits on the 5/5 lady, I charged into her and his medic because I had taken a plasma shot with the gunner because I used the ventriloquar to flip the bonk stick lady on engaged, so I could just take care of that melee threat immediately. She survived due to the medic, so I'm like, okay, awesome. So I do actually remember what he did in the second turning point. He basically had her get near the recover item and pass. I thought that was a very questionable move, so which I exploited immediately by charging my leader into the medic, one-shotting her with the power fist, and then using the tactical ploy to charge into his other operative on the back side of the board, which basically got me into a double charge, locking up both his flamer and the other lady who I ended up fighting and killing. So I got a double kill immediately into the first activation of my game. And now I'm also remembering I actually Vox screamed the Bonk lady so she couldn't get out of position. And then after that, that is when he actually went and did something with her, leaving me to take my Ventriloquar, Ventriloquar, and charge her. Now that she had passed, I basically blocked off him from scoring recover item, and also from I flipped the point into my favor for secure. And that's it. Kind of steamrolled from there. I had the Screecher go up and kill the Eviscerator because she was a little too far forward, and he did not anticipate me having as much charge distance as I had. Because people forget 32 millimeters get you a little more charge than you really think that they have. And took her out. Surprisingly enough, my Screecher took quite a few shots before he ended up going down. But then I ended up putting 2 more guys out of position for me to take out in subsequent turning points. It actually ended up being a pretty close in points game, merely because he just has the body to score points, and he just kind of converted from killing me into scoring points, which is effectively what you do in Novitiates anyway into elites. But he did that far too late. I basically denied him all points and recover item. He took Consecrate Ground as well, which was I'm not sure if that's an optimal choice, but it seems like an odd choice to me.
I mean, if you expect to be dying on points, Consecrate Ground is pretty good.
Oh, you know what? Now that you're saying that, I think he was playing it wrong, because I was trying to remember. I'm like, I also remember playing Novitiates and not remembering this is the way that this works, and now I'm remembering why it works the way that it works. Wouldn't have mattered anyway. He would have scored it on the way he didn't think it. He thought it was literally just control it, which is not apparently the way it works. So either way, doesn't matter. He's still a relatively newish player. So
Oh wait, no,
it is what it
Consecrate
is.
Ground might be the one where you have to control the point at the end of a turn, at the end of a battle.
Yes, that is that one. Then
Yeah.
then it is the way that it works.
Was the other one Murdered something or other? It's been a while since I played Novitiates.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Either way, I wasn't really thinking about it because, like I said, I knew he wasn't going to score any points on it anyhow, just the way the board was. And yeah, it ended up being 15-19. Though I did make a silly error on my mistake at the end of the game. If I had left an operative alone and went and charged a different operative, I would have gotten the last point on Sow the Fear, or I believe it's Sow Terror, whichever one, the 7-wound one, which is basically you have to kill a 7-wound operative outside of 6 inches of other operatives, which you may be like, oh, that sounds terrible. You're going to be within 6 inches of everybody. But in later turning points, if you're doing what you're doing anyway with Nemesis Claw and killing the ever-living shit out of them like you should be, you're going to find a lot of guys out of nowhere, and especially if you pair it with Eliminate Guards, if it's secure or loot, it's basically 2 free points every turn if you're playing the game. At least that's the way I see it. Other people don't see it that way.
It's like a VP balloon.
Yeah, it is, and actually, several of their TAC ops actually work that way. The one where if you kill an enemy operative on their back on the objective in their territory, that's great. On Into the Dark, it always has scored me 2 points every time I've used it, and that's the thing too. One of my favorite things with this team, particularly, is that they love to balloon points. So, like, for example, that Ventriloquar play that I mentioned, where he ended up passing with the lady, which that was his biggest mistake. He should not have kept her there. He should have just pulled her back, and I wouldn't have scored those points. I mean, I would have eventually, but it wouldn't have been a 3-point swing. So basically, what I ended up doing within 3 points on the third turning point, I scored Eliminate Guards because I still had 1 point to score on that. I scored the 7-wound thing because there was no models near her. And then I just took the Ventriloquar after I put him on conceal the first start of the activation because I was already in engagement. Ran him all the way back to my back line with a move and a dash because I only needed to fight once. And my opponent went, yeah, well, I'm never going to see him again. And I'm like, you're exactly correct. So, it's that was a 3-point swing in my direction, and it just kind of snowballed from there. 19-15 in my favor. Should have been probably 20-15, but either way, that's what we're here to talk about, is those small mistakes. That's kind of the summary of my game.
Joe, you mentioned at the start, though, that his leader got a pretty nasty shot off with the plasma pistol. What happened there?
Yeah, basically, I mean, here's the thing. So I took my leader, killed the medic, which I'm like, awesome, don't want to deal with that anymore. And then I used the ploy that lets you get an extra charge or dash for them over to, I forget which operative it was. It was an operative of no particular consequence. Oh no, it was the cup lady. I'm sorry. It was an operative that mattered a lot. Sorry.
Yeah.
I killed the cup lady, and I also was engagement range of the flamer. So I mean, I was fully expecting my leader to die. Because at the end of the day, if you're hitting on twos with a plasma pistol and you're re-rolling ones, because that's just the way the novitiates work with the little auto chastiser, is they have a hyper accurate, probably the most accurate plasma pistol in the game. You're gonna lose a guy. So I was like, she's right there. He's just gonna give the flamer lady an APL, fall back, and either shoot me or do something more productive. He did something more productive, and then just shot me with the plasma pistol. And of course, my leader died. Even with the or no, I'm sorry, he actually did shoot me. I did have prescience tokens to get rid of one of the damage dice, but it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, if it's 20 damage, even if I save one, I'm not surviving that. So it is what it is. The basically my big tip for people, if you're going into novitiates, if the leader is shooting her pistol, she's gonna kill what she's shooting at, and just expect that to happen.
Yeah, it's brutal.
So it sounds like that's a pretty, like, you feel extremely confident going into that matchup. I mean, there's a lot of things that Nemesis Claw have going for them against, like a team like that, like a guardsman equivalent sort of team. 7 wounds, 4 or 5 up save. They also have the Imperium keyword, so I imagine, that
Yes,
if you needed
that came
to
up.
cash in the rerolls, you're going to be able to do that.
Now, bear in mind, it's not necessarily that they're a guardsman team because, for example, like I think they have a horrible matchup into Vet Guard, right? And I mean, this is what I always the discussion about elites. Everybody has a bad matchup into veteran guardsmen, brood brothers, those top teams, because the core problem with them is the amount of bodies they have. I can deal with the rest of the nonsense, but at the end of the day, if I'm up against 12 activations and I have 6 activations, even if I roll max prescience tokens, it doesn't really particularly matter. Now, bear in mind, I'm not saying it's unwinnable because it's not unwinnable.
It certainly seems like you're going to be coming from behind, and you're just
Absolutely.
really going to have to just maximize your double kills from the start of the second turning point.
The only team I think it's unwinnable that it was unwinnable against was pre nerf Vet Guard. Pre nerf Vet Guard was a possible matchup for any elite team, and I will stand by that. Bear in mind, this is including if it's a good Vet Guard player, as I've beaten plenty of Vet Guard players that were not necessarily up to snuff with my play with elite teams, and that's not necessarily a statement of like I'm much better than everyone. It's at the end of the day, 14 bodies is a lot to manage. So kudos to anyone that plays those teams. They're hard to play, but against elites, it's much easier because once you understand the basic principles of this game, the answer becomes, oh, just score points and deal with threats as they come, and I can just sit back and do whatever I want. Awesome. But I will say, with the current state the meta is in, I don't believe that in Nemesis Claw has an impossible matchup into Pathfinders, Brood Brothers, and Vet Guard. They're very hard. I would say the hardest of those matchups is probably Pathfinders. It's neck and neck with Vet Guard because they have in-death atonement, which can be really, really annoying, and it can fuck up your day in a lot of ways.
Yeah, but Pathfinders can just ignore obscuring real easy. So IMC just doesn't work against that team.
No, it doesn't. And in Midnight Clad is actually super effective now against Guardsman's teams. You can actually play it pretty safe turn 1 and be reliably okay without getting shot back, which is great. And I'm glad that they have that tool. But as George said, when you have a what is it? They're Pathfinder's on 13 bodies, or are they on 12 now?
They're on 12.
They're on 12. When you have a 12 body team and 3 of them have AP1 rifles, that can reliably remove obscuring like in the first turning point, and what you do as an elite team is you heavily rely on obscuring and non-reciprocal shots against hordes. I mean, the answer becomes, what do? I mean, even if you're like Phobos and you have smoke, you ignore the smoke. So, here's my tip to GW. Hey, when the team has 12 bodies and really good guns, maybe don't take away the main defensive tool those teams have against teams that have, less than half their bodies. Just a thought.
Yeah, it'll certainly be interesting to see how like those teams kind of get reworked, if they get reworked at all in the new edition. Any parting thoughts on your game, Joe?
No, just Alex is a great guy. I love playing him, and he improved dramatically, and that's my favorite part about the league. And next week I'm going, or I guess tomorrow, literally, I'll be playing Chris's Commandos. Chris is a very good player, so I'm very excited to chop at the bit at that matchup. And I actually have not played an elite team into Commandos since their nerf. So I'm very curious how that's going to go. I want to try some stuff out, but I'm probably just gonna, because I actually want to win the game, just focus on the main core things and just do some Nightlordies things, flay some bodies, throw them around, shoot those orcs to death with a heavy bolter, and yeah. It's also Into the Dark, which is great for really both of us, but probably me more than him.
Yeah, 3 APL door shenanigans is real strong.
George, you want to tell us a little bit about your game from last week?
Yeah, so I played Andy Brown. Very good player. I'm playing...
He will tell you otherwise, and this is Andy me. This is me telling you you're a good player, and we all acknowledge that, and we love you.
Yeah, so he played Kasrkin into my Brood Bros, and he said, I like playing Kasrkin because it is something that you can play without thinking too hard about it. I said, yeah, that makes sense. You don't have to think too much about what you're doing as Kasrkin, because the team is just so straightforward. And turn 1 was just position. It was positioning the game. He positioned up and staged up in the midboard behind some heavy cover. I staged up just before the midboard. We were playing on the Turning Point Tactics version 2 map for Battleground. And there's on the midboard, on the center line, is just like an open space with 2 of those buildings, like offset 2 inches from the line on either side of it. And so we just had a few people up in there. He had a couple people up in there. And I managed to get a sniper shot off on one of his guys from my drop zone at the very edge of the map, because Brood Bros Ruthless Coordination is so good. And for Ruthless Coordination says that if you want to shoot somebody, you can, if the shooter has visibility to the target and visibility to a friendly, you can use the friendly's cover lines. So I used my friendly who drew cover lines that was going through a barricade, which he was on conceal, but my sniper was on advantage, so he treats people in light cover as on engage. So treated as on engage, drew cover lines, unobstructed, no obscuring from someone else, and took a sniper shot at, it was just a normal dude. No, it was his hot shot, I think. But I didn't kill him. Sniper let me down. I think I might have missed on 2 dice and rolled a crit and a hit. It was bad, but like, I didn't expect to kill him. I just wanted to take a shot out, get a crossfire token down. And then things really started getting weird on turn 2. I won initiative, and he was setting up a frag grenade play just to hit my dudes that were staged up behind my wall. And I was trying to set up my own frag grenade play to hit those dudes behind his wall. But I needed to give myself +1 APL to make it happen, so I needed to stall for time. So I just ran my agitator up into the front of the door so his dudes couldn't run out. And then that was the thing that gave me enough time to lob a frag grenade into those guys. He just couldn't find a way, because he didn't position aggressive enough to push out and actually kill my agitator. Like, he couldn't get around where he was not in cover. And so that allowed me enough time to get a frag grenade off to bring his medic and his leader down to 1. My Primus was behind heavy cover up in his territory, just silent shooting, menacing a flank. Really, it was at the end of turn 2. I think he had 4 models left, and two of them, the sniper, the comms was uninjured, and then I think he had a medic. No, he had the demo guy uninjured. At the end of turn 2, I think I ended up bringing him down to just the sniper at the top of turn 4. So I won that game. I think I got nearly max score or max score. I took infiltration. I knew I took gather surveillance. I took the faction tack op where I have to kill someone within 6 inches and not be in line of sight of literally anyone else. And subversive control. And I maxed those out. My biggest takeaway is, man, Kasrkin have a rough time into mixed horde. If you can fight and shoot relatively reliably, which Brood Bros can because, crossfire tokens are a thing, it becomes so much harder for Kasrkin to just compete in the same spaces. And then just being conservative with my bodies, it helped. It helped a lot. Normally I throw dudes up the board and just score points. But this time, being a little more conservative, I think it kept my threats alive long enough to just trade super efficiently.
One thing that you mentioned there, and this is a thing that I've not heard a ton of people talking about with the Brood Brothers, is in regards to the Primus, everybody loves the initiative shenanigans. It's really strong. It's really powerful. But his silent shooting is so good. You can just park him up in heavy cover and then just start shooting so much stuff.
Yeah.
It's so good. And he shoots twice.
He does shoot twice. He fights twice. He can generate command points. There's a lot about the Primus on paper that's really good. And I think he's my actually least favorite leader on the team. Mm-hmm. I use the Magus a lot in Gunhammer Open, almost exclusively. And I think Primus is a right call into Kasrkin on Open. And I, in theory, like what the Primus does. I mean, I did win initiative, where Andy won on ties and he rolled a 6 because I rolled a 7, right? So you can do silly stuff, you just have initiative. But against Kasrkin, I never killed anything in one shot. With 4 dice hitting on 2s, 2/4 damage, lethal 5 up. I killed nothing in one shot. It took 2 shots to kill anything. Which, fine, fair. I still killed stuff with him, but he's just not as martially powerful as he should be on paper.
Yeah, it just doesn't have the same sort of deadly impact as the Magus just feeding mortal wounds to operatives.
Yeah.
Have you been running infiltration a lot with the Brood Brothers?
Yes, because I hate security. I have a little bit of a PTSD from running Vet Guard where security was my only option. I should probably, talk to somebody about it so I can maybe approach security in a healthy way again. But man, I really hate security. So I run Seek and Destroy unless it's a bad option, and then I'll run Infiltration just because getting Gather Surveillance or Stalk Target's pretty easy. Unless you're getting tabled, Subversive Control's relatively easy. And then they have pretty decent faction tac ops.
Yeah, so question, because I was talking about it, how do you feel about Brood Brothers into a team like Nightlords and Legionary? Because I know you've been playing Mark a bunch, and he's been on Legionary.
I actually played Mark last Saturday on Secure.
And that is to say our mutual friend, Mark French, who runs the league at Atomic. Great dude.
Mark plays basically an entirely Khorne Legionary list, which is terrifying, by the way. I managed to win that game by 1 point, but at the end of turn 2, he killed 6 models with 2 dudes, it felt like. Yeah, perpetual aggression. He just perpetually aggressed into my face and made me eat a butcher sandwich, and it didn't taste very good. But he did have to overextend into it, and I got Plasma Gun, Melt-A-Gun, Sniper off. And so I killed dudes back, but at the top of turn 3, he had his acolyte. No, he had a plasma gun to my plasma gun, melta-gun, sniper, and comms. Like, I had 4 models left at the top of turn 3, and my commander. So, like, neither of us were doing super good on that. But in general, I like the Magus into elite teams that I know stun will be useful against. So, not Phobos, not Nurgle Legionary. Intercession is a tough one because I want the mortal wounds because they just have, 14 wounds apiece. But like,
You probably take the Magus against Gellerpox too, right?
yeah, I would probably take Magus and Interference against Gellerpox just so I can line up more of those stuns. Because Gellerpox do not do well if they're stunned.
No, they certainly don't.
But yeah, so my week 1 game went very well for me. I nearly maxed. It wasn't an easy win, but it was a decisive win. So, Mark, what about your league game for this last week?
So my week 1 game, I played against Drew, who is a newer player. I actually played against him in his very first Kill Team game about a week and a half or 2 weeks prior to our league game. And Drew had played, I think, 7 subsequent games after his first game. So he was really running a gauntlet preparing to get ready for the league. He was playing the Hernkyn Yaegirs, and I was playing the Gellerpox Infected. It was my first matchup against the Hernkyn Yaegirs. And I got to say that my biggest takeaway from the game was that's just an awesome team
Yeah,
with a lot of really good tools. I think the Hernkyn Yaegirs are really neat.
I agree. I think they're super neat.
Not a whole lot of intrigue prior to the game. The only choice that I made prior to the game was I took 3 Curse Mites, and I usually tend to skew more towards Stinger Swarms on open board, but I figure if he can just add an APL at whim to anybody he wants, the stun's going to be a bit less useful. So I went 3 Curse Mites and a Stinger, and we played on the same map as you. We played the TPT2 map for Battlegrounds, and I was pretty cognizant because I think from one of the deployment zones, there's a good angle you can get to deep strike. Just if you get up on the vantage point, you can just kind of get a good line of sight and blast a bunch of operatives behind one of those like light barricades on the Yaegirs terrain. So I was really like scrunched up behind the heavy terrain and the scramble pile. I had one of my hulks just kind of out in the open. I was the attacker, so I deployed last, and I felt pretty good about that because he had deployed his big tank killing AP. Joe, you play the Yaegirs. What's their gunner? Is it just the gunner?
So, like a rocket dude?
It's a gunner that has 3 different profiles, which are all hilarious.
Yeah.
It's for AP1, 5 attacks, hitting on 4s, 4/5.
Right, but what's the operative's name? Is it just the gunner?
Yeah, it's just gunner, I believe. Yeah.
Gunnar.
Gunnar.
Yeah, gunner.
Disappointing. They should all have cool names. I'd love Space Dwarfs. Make some funny names with them. Come on. It's like I said in the Discord. The fact that the leader is not called the Jägermeister is a huge missed opportunity. But getting back to the fun stuff here. So one of my hosts was basically just out in the open, and I felt pretty fine about that because the sniper and the gunner was deployed on the opposite end of the board, and they were not in really a position to make a big lateral move or hop up in a position to where they could shoot me. So that was all pretty good. I did forget that the shotguns have long range profiles, so that guy did end up eating 3 wounds before he ultimately made it into heavy cover.
What madman fires shotguns with long range profiles? But man, the fact that you took damage from that, I don't know what is crazier.
I will say one of the things is that it was not a very lucky feel no pain game for me. I feel like in the last league and in the last tournament that we did here in the Triangle, my feel no pains were rolling hot. I've rolled a lot of really good feel no pains. I rolled several in that game where I just didn't roll a single 5 or 6.
Yeah, been there.
Yeah, it happens. It happens. So we actually split 2-2, I think, in the first turning point. I made a mistake where I had one of my operatives in a position to sort of like do a recon dash forward and then grab one of the central points. I kind of opted at the last minute to go for infiltrate to try and like kind of threaten a little bit more on one side of the board. I thought he was going to push up onto what was my left side of the board and like try and get a sneaky shot off with his Sam Fisher operative dude who can like shoot from conceal and mess with operatives who are on conceal within 6 inches. Ultimately, I didn't use my infiltrate and I missed out on a point on turn 1. He was not in a position to get up the board either. He had like done his forward deployment with the Yaegirs, but it was still just like going around a barricade was just going to cut off a little bit too much movement. I think, let's see, what were some interesting things from that game? Turning point 2, he won initiative. He opted to move who I selected as my eliminate guards target out of the way, which was a fair move. I then was so tempted because the eliminate guards target was in a spot where I could run my lumberghast up and charge basically 3 operatives. I could get the mine layer dude who was my eliminate guards target, regular warrior, and then I think his leader were just all kind of clumped together. And I really wanted to do that and just deal a bunch of mortal wounds with the spike charge and fight twice and all sorts of stuff. But I forgot that they have that ploy, that tack ploy that lets them shoot into engagement with an Overwatch after somebody charges. And I'm like, dang, I could just eat like a bunch of shots from this gunner.
4-4 shotguns being like, actually eat 8 damage before you do anything. That's rough.
Well, it's like that gunner is really threatening, dude. I mean, yeah, it hits on 4s, but it's 5 shots, AP 1, and if it's firing that Overwatch shot, it's getting the cult ambush reroll because it hasn't moved yet during the turning point.
Oh, yeah.
And so I thought better of it because I really wanted the spiked charge and just dealing a bunch of mortals, but they can just heal D3 plus 1. So it might have just basically just been throwing a Hulk out there for nothing. I ended up doing an interesting play with my first activation in Turning Point 2 where I basically double grenaded using 2 mutants. And it was really cool and really fun. I love getting a big blast like that. But it, again, lended itself to a point where Yaegirs are so cool because I killed one dude over there with that blast, and he used that tack ploy that's basically like their version of grudge tokens, where you just drop the token on the board where the dude's dead, and it lets you flip misses to hits or hits to crits. Lo and behold, his next activation, he kills both of those mutants with Sam Fisher because he just runs up and like fights one of them and does the silent shooting against the other one, and it was nasty, dude, absolutely nasty. One thing I think that stood out about Turning Point 2 in that game is it felt like it took a long, like I felt like both of us were kind of durdling, just waiting for somebody else to make a move. I sort of did my signature kind of have everybody staged behind heavy cover close to the midboard in Turning Point 1, and I was waiting for a good target to come out, and it just took a long time for that to happen. I did do some, I did ultimately end up doing like a double charge, and that was pretty effective. I also ended up staging some people to make like bigger charges in Turning Point 3, and that ended up working in my favor, even though he could make the shot with the bombast. I just kind of ended up snowballing out of control once I got initiative Turning Point 3, charged the boat, spun in, and then watched as everybody tried to fall back.
And you get stuck, and you get stuck.
Yeah, it's very feels bad for sure.
Yep.
Things that I took away from that game, again, Yaegirs, so cool. They got so many good abilities, and it's a team that I'm very interested in trying now.
They rip up 8 wound to 7 wound teams. Like, they have very little chance into them. I'll tell you, because I played him at the GW store, and I lost with Inquisition. Like, I forgot how fragile Inquisition are, and they're just so reliable, and they're just so like stinking tough.
Yeah,
like, it's just
to that point, like the damage mitigation was not super useful in fighting a Hulk, but against anybody else, it's going to be super useful. You're basically like a 10 or 12 wound model at that point.
Yeah,
Yaegirs are what I wish scouts were.
What do you?
That's I mean, and I imagine scouts wish they were Yaegirs. They were shorter dudes with smaller knives.
Yeah, but scouts are corn berserkers now.
You're gonna do that at some point. It's gonna make my soul so sad. Okay, so for backstory, George likes to do these horrifically lore not friendly things.
That's not
that
true.
he
They are
calls-
lore friendly, and that's what makes you mad about it.
Wait for it. We're gonna get there. Oh, trust me, we're gonna get there. He loves to do these horrible things he calls teams, and that are the bully from Toy Story's amalgamations of models and parts. That
So far, you said nothing untrue. Continue.
that he smashes together because he either enjoys the lore so much of that particular model, or it's just whatever he has on hand at the time.
I like chaos.
So, yes, and he really likes chaos. Now, what he's describing is he was going to turn corn berserkers into scouts. Now, let me explain why. For several reasons, that's not friendly. The main one being they're 10 wounds and 4-up save. Not a power armor save, and not 12 wounds.
Corn berserkers aren't wearing full power armor anyway.
They are. They literally
No,
are.
they don't have arm. They're running tank top power armor. It's fine. That's a 4-up save.
I want you to look up their stat block in 40k.
I don't care about their stat block in 40k.
Save. Oh, okay. So how you explaining the wound difference there, bud?
Oh, they just forgot to eat their Wheaties.
Okay. Okay. Well, anyways, so yeah, it's one of the things that we love to make fun of George for. So, like, for example, his patriarch is just an old metal demon prince with a giant claw that he smacked on from what model?
It was a Forge Fiend.
Oh yeah, just a Forge Fiend leg he just smacked on there.
Listen, I don't know where his arm went. I've had the model for like 15 years. Things get lost. I had to make do.
Look, and then I'm not gonna rip into you about this, but actually I am gonna rip into you about this. George, your Corsairs are fucked, dude.
Yeah,
they're fucked.
Yeah, they are. Dude, oh man, that conversion is
nightmarish.
Yeah, there's a reason that there's two reasons I don't play Corsairs. One, because I don't own the models, and two, that conversion is messed. It's just absolutely wrong.
Now, what you did is you basically took every model that you could scrape together and basically made them this fucked up pirate crew of dwarves, elves, humans, orcs.
Yeah. My bird guy was a dwarf with a little nurgling on his base. Not an orc with a nurgling on his base. The orc just wanted to be happy with his little buddies.
And this is not even mentioning the paint jobs, George.
Oh, that was before speed paint, though. Listen, I'm not a painter. I don't like painting. Speed paint does so much lifting for me.
Do y'all know those memes of the Warhammer where they have the Space Marine and it's just caked on paint and it says, "Father, do you love me?" Like, that's
It's not that bad, but it's not far off. It's really not that far off.
Now, as I said, there's nothing wrong with the things he's doing. Not everyone's a painter. Not everyone enjoys the hobby aspect of this. But all I ask you people out there is, if I sit across the table from you, that there was some effort put into your models. Now, I can say that George certainly put some effort into them. Now, the amount of time or the actual effort that was put into them, that's a separate conversation. But he did
put a lot of effort into building the models.
You sure did, buddy.
It's also it's such an interesting tactical element, because think of the edge you get in the game where you have to like keep pointing out to your opponent, oh yeah, that orc right there, that's the that is my bird guy. Oh yeah, that's my Darklance, the Tau. That's my Darklance.
See, what you're describing is called modeling for advantage, and that's why it's outlawed in pretty much every tournament. However, George is seemingly able to convince any TO, no matter what horrible nightmare he smashes together, to let him place some models on the table. So
I'm not modeling for advantage. I'm modeling for psychic damage, and it's working on you.
All I know is that every time I look at my models, I go, that is clearly, I know what it is. I don't have to ask. Particularly egregious that you had to stop playing was your Beastman. Dear God.
Yeah, that one was, listen, so for context, listeners, I made a Ravagers team before the Ravagers were widely available. I bought 2 boxes of chaos possessed marines, and built a whole team. Pistols and everything. All the weapons were fully accurate. Whip guy, a bonk guy, blade guys, out of possessed chaos marines and some other bits I had. Like even the Tox bomb guy had an actual bomb in his hand. It worked, but like there's only so different you can make a chaos possessed marine look from another chaos possessed marine. So like I'm not too mad, but people are like, maybe not that one at tournaments. I was like, yeah, fair enough.
Well, I've got one last thought from my particular league game. Again, I was playing against a new player, and I ended up doing one of those moves where, like, I could see most of his knife sticking out from behind, like, an Yaegirs wall, and I'm like, "I can see your model, I can charge you and be behind heavy cover like this, and basically, effectively, be you're not gonna be able to shoot back or anything like that." And moments like that, feels bad for new players, like, I want to become better about playing with new players and playing in a way where new players can learn. Obviously, this was a league game, and so I want to be competitive, and I don't want to just totally walk somebody through a league game. But like, what are your tips for playing with new players? Because I know that both of you have done that a lot and have even played against me when I was a new player last year.
Yeah, what I like to do is I'll try and suss out, like, so in my head, I've got tiers of what I like to call kill team gamey bullshit. And so things like non-reciprocal shooting are the lowest tier of kill team gamey bullshit. But like when you get to non-reciprocal engagement range, that's at like advanced kill team gamey bullshit.
Hmm.
And so like if I'm playing a player who's got like 5 games under his belt, I'm gonna probably just skip the non-reciprocal engagement range nonsense. But if they've got like 10 to 15 like 10 games under their belt, I will place my model in such a way, say, this model right here is inside your engagement range, but you are not inside my engagement range because kill team gamey bullshit. And then I'll explain how that works, and then I'll say, and now I'm not gonna do that, and then move it so that everyone can see everyone else is just
Remind
playing
me how
normally.
that works. Is it one of the key components of engagement range that you? Oh no, sorry. No, you're right. Because fighting, you have to have visibility. Engagement range, you don't.
Yeah, engagement range, you need visibility. And if one
And
model has
charging, you need
visibility,
visibility as well.
well, charging, you need to end inside engagement range. And to be inside engagement range, you need visibility. But you can
Right.
have a model in such a way where it can see a model through a wall, or like
Hmm.
just around a wall, but the model around the wall can see nothing of the other model.
Right. The rule specifically says a model needs to be able to see the other model. It doesn't need to be both models are visible to one
Now,
another.
see,
Yeah.
if they do change the game, and Georgia may not be a fan of this, I would like all that kind of stuff explicitly taken out of the game because it's not fun. And every time I've gotten hit with a gotcha like that, it doesn't feel good because it's not it shouldn't feel good. Like that is such like rules lawyer nonsense that I guarantee you the designers did not think of. And I bet you if they give it another pass, they probably would take it out.
I hardcore agree the designers did not think about it, but I disagree. I think a lot of that stuff adds depth to the game.
Talk to me about a player who's ever felt good on the receiving end of that, and I'll agree with you.
Uh,
I felt really good when George charged my screecher with his patriarch. And you charged him basically. You
Through
said
a
you could
window.
see him through a window
Through
on
a
the
window.
Octarius terrain.
Yep, because that window exists, so I can draw
Neither of our
visibility.
claws would have been able to fit through the gap in that window, but we were fighting through it.
Yep. And I lost.
But I think that is much more the exception than the rule.
But yeah, I think a lot of it is that people don't tend to keep all of the possibilities of everything in your head, and like, that would be crazy if you could. That's what the best players in the world do. And I mean, I'm certainly not there, but I can keep enough kill team gamey bullshit situations in my head that, like, when I see them coming up, I like to point them out to my opponents and say, here's some kill team gamey bullshit that you can now use in the future. I'm not going to use it here, but I'm going to show you how it works. And that's what I like to do.
Yeah, I think that's a great solution. Do you have any other tips and suggestions for experienced players trying to play and teach newer players?
For me, I try to explain all that gamey stuff and out the gate. Like, particularly, I try to explain the concept, like the hard concepts first, and be like, okay, now let's get into the easy stuff. And from there, it's just it's baby steps, and a lot of it is just getting reps in.
It certainly is. And, when I think about my experience in my 2 games against Drew, and then also, like, I feel like I played, I can think of last year when I was maybe not an experienced player, but a less new player playing against newer players. And I think that the biggest thing for me is just really just trying to communicate effectively, like walk, like really, really like going piece by piece through those rules that allow, the gamey bullshit, as it were, and kind of backing it up and being like, well, this is the piece that causes this particular interaction to happen. And like sometimes in the games and like in a moment like that, it's kind of hard for me to remember to do that sort of stuff, because I think we can all agree that there's a bit of a steep, learning curve to kill team. And a lot of those things kind of become second nature after a certain point, but they certainly aren't at the beginning of the journey.
Yeah. And just making sure that you are not being a dickhead to newer people is always the best first step.
Right on. Well, thanks, fellas. It's been a blast.
Thank you.
As always.
And remember, kids, just remember. Just really try hard to remember. It's so hard these days to remember.
Remember, folks, stay screaming.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Vox Screaming. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon, YouTube, or anywhere else you get your podcasts. Please follow, subscribe, and leave us a review. Any of those things are going to help us grow. Thanks for listening, and we'll be back soon with another episode.